Hello and welcome to the Golfing Greenkeeper podcast. I'm your host, Steve Smith, who has been absent for a couple of weeks. I have got plenty of news coming to you for this episode of Walking the Fairways. This is episode number 48. Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining me once again on Walking the Fairways. This is the news segment of golf courses around Australia where I try and give you as much information as I can of what's been going on. And there has been plenty going on in golf courses around the country, but also a little bit with me. And I normally don't bother with any of that information. But when I haven't pumped out a couple of episodes for you, or there was just a vacant blank space, and I do apologise. There's been plenty of extreme rainfall and some serious rain events going on into the east coast of Australia, and it did hit home where I and my family reside on the northern beaches of Sydney. Lots going on, and that affected my work, and I had a lot of things that I had to tend to with work and other people's properties and so on. So, but then the other side of things, all I can say to you guys is, men out there, if you're not feeling 100%, you probably should get your health checked. I had a little wake-up call myself, and for me, heart problems do run in the family, and had a little bit of concern in my chest. So I ended up hightailing it to the doctor, had a few tests done, got to get a few more done, but as it stands, everything seems to be okay in the short term, but I've got to do a few other bits and pieces and get checked out for other things for the long term. So yeah, if you're not feeling 100%, guys, don't be scared. Don't think you're too tough for it, because you're not tougher than anything that can cause a problem with your heart. So go and get your health checked is all I can say. It certainly opened my eyes up to a few other things, least of all my age, and I'm only 41. And I say only because for a lot of people, it doesn't come into effect into your lives a lot later. But certainly scared me a little bit. And one thing that I can say to you is go and get your health checked. You are not too tough, and it's not beyond you. So, just some words of advice there from me to you. Now, we're going to start off walking the fairways. Let's just go for a wander, as I always say, and let's get out there and see what's been happening. And there has been plenty. Lots of different fields that we're going to look at in this one, and there's been plenty of news going on, good, bad, and some wonderful things as well. So we're going to start off in a state that I don't always talk about, and that is the A.C.T, the Capital Territory of Australia, and that's where Canberra is, and there's plenty of great golf down there in Canberra in the A.C.T. So what we're going to start off with is Federal Golf Club in Canberra. Now, they have been doing some more work with an extension of their chipping green surfaces. Now, I mentioned Federal last time in Walking the Fairways, and it's good to see that there's more stuff happening down there. So they're extending the chipping green. They've added about 1/3 to the original size of the chipping green, so it's quite a big increase here for this practice area of the club. And obviously, look, if you're going to increase a practice space, you're always doing it knowing, based around the fact that you've got members and visitors and people practicing in that area, and it's being utilised quite well. So obviously, Federal have decided that they're going to expand that space, and they're doing so with quite a significant increase. Like I said, about 1/3 larger. And this is going to allow to better spread the wear around the green surface, and being able to move those target holes where there's a concentration of wear, which is around those holes and those target areas on the putting green, so on the chipping green. So that just gives them the ability to move the wear around, which is a great thing, and it just spreads the traffic a lot better. And it also is going to give more people more room to practice. So it will allow for more people to use the chipping green at the same time, which is a bonus and a big positive. So a few little things going on there at Federal, but these are all positives for the golf club and for the facilities of the members as well. And if you're a guest or a visitor, you get a chance to get down there, you like to warm up and just test the speed of things, test how the greens are, do a little bit of practice and the like. So very good little things going on there at Federal, and all these little things add up to make the differences from what they were and try and be competitive around to other places and other facilities, because as much as a rising tide lifts all boats, all golf clubs do slightly compete with each other for, membership. And that's a fact, whether we like it or not. We're always, they're always trying to offer better facilities available and just always improve their golf clubs and golf facilities and golf courses. So there is that little bit of competition going on between golf clubs as well. But look, Federal are keeping up with the Joneses, and they are improving their facilities on offer, and the chipping green is one that's on the improve. Now we go to New South Wales, which is my home state. As I've mentioned before, I always hear quite a few things happening in New South Wales. We're going to start off with down in Albury, actually, along the New South Wales-Victoria border, which is the mighty Murray River. And we're going to go into Thaguna Golf Club there, just in one of the suburbs there. It's actually, I think, to the east of Albury itself, the northeast there. Look, Centreline Golf is the construction company, and they've been busy building a new chipping green complex, including some new bunkers that will actually be built using the custom bind bunker liner product as well. So, again, here's another golf course, golf club membership and the like, that are improving on their practice facilities and the different external facilities outside their golf course itself. So, the membership, it's an offering to the membership, it's an offering to the locals, and they're improving that as well. So good things happening at Thaguna. I don't know that they've been able to do a great deal of work in recent times, but they're starting off with a chipping green, a couple of new bunkers there, and the whole green complex is being rebuilt basically. So it's going to be a new addition effectively to the offering of the members there, and it's a great thing that they will be able to utilise as they practice their golf, which, we all know that that's what we're out there to do. Going to a golf club that I haven't mentioned before, and that's Everglades Golf Club at Woy Woy on the central coast of New South Wales. Now, it's just north of Sydney is where this is, just to give you an idea if you're not from New South Wales. Now, just before all the rain that we've recently had, they completed some new construction of the second tee, including returfing it and re-leveling it. So a little bit of work there going out on the golf course, which is great to see. And Everglades, it's in a little funny little nook there at Woy Woy. It's sort of off the beaten track a little bit. It's not a direct passage of traffic that you're going to go. You're either going to Woy Woy or you're not. You're not going to pass through it by accident. So it's a club that gets patronised quite well by the local area, and they're doing a little bit to improve the golf course, which is great to see. Now, they've also done some new concrete paths there going down on the 2nd, the 8th and the 9th tees. There may still be some parts of this to complete, but the paths are a good addition to the areas that are funnels for traffic and the highest form of concentrated traffic being that of golf carts. So, they've still got probably some more extensions to these paths to finish off, but they're working through them. And with concentration levels where, from tee to fairway, where you get tracks formed and that sort of stuff in narrow areas as you fan out towards the fairway, a lot of concentrated traffic creates tracks. And so this is just to sort of minimise that, put down a path where people can drive and keep that concentrated traffic on an area that's not going to wear out. Now, I hope none of this new work was damaged during this recent rain event, but well done to the greenkeeping team at Everglades for getting through some of this new work, including the second tee. And like I said, fingers crossed that now that we've been able to assess things post this massive rain event, I hope that none of these areas have been damaged too badly at all. So fingers crossed there for Everglades. Now, we're going to the central west of New South Wales to one of my favourite areas, and we're going to head out to Orange. And there are a couple of golf clubs out here I've mentioned before, and we're going to talk about both of them actually, but I'll start off with Wentworth Golf Club in Orange. Now, Wentworth Golf Club is now under the banner of Orange X Services Club after they amalgamated a couple of years ago, and there is some serious investment going on here at Wentworth. A new irrigation system has just about been completed, and it's a massive new tool for the golf club and superintendent Josh Sims and his team to have at their disposal and in the maintenance of the golf course. And look, this is a big tool. Any new irrigation system really is a big tool, and that's what's happening there at Wentworth. So big investment by the club and Orange X Services Club into Wentworth, and they're really obviously going to make this something special. That's their goal. And there's also been some reconfiguration of the golf course. Now, that's just recently started, which is due to some boundary concerns along the 4th and 5th holes with neighbouring properties. Now, there are a couple of sort of mid to long length par 4s that are back-to-back along the, let me see if I get this right, along the eastern boundary of the golf course. I think that's correct. And they've had a number of problems over a number of years now. It's been quite a long time, and they're finally having the opportunity to adjust these golf holes to sort of deal with that problem, to minimise the effects of golf balls heading out of the boundaries due to big slices from right-handed players and hooks from left-handers. So just errant golf shots into private properties outside the boundary. So that's what they've been trying to do. That's the goal. They've reconfigured it. And what they're doing, and it's going to be over the next few months that they're going to complete all this work. And a lot of it's actually been finished right now. But they're going to change the fourth hole's being turned into a par 5 from a par 4. And the fifth hole is being turned into a par 3 from a par 4. And that's as the golf course boundary bends around the corner. They sort of decided to reconfigure it, and this has been done in-house, is my understanding, and a couple of those major changes to those holes. And then there's also a slight realignment happening to the 8th hole, with a complete new tee complex being built, and it's just been finished, and it's built to the west of the old teeing area. I was chatting with Superintendent Josh Sims just the other day, and he was giving me a bit of an update on some of those areas that have been going down. So there's plenty going on here at Wentworth. So you've got to stay up to date with the club. If you're a visitor to Orange out in the central west of New South Wales, you want to stay up to date to know what's going on. But lots of things happening there at Wentworth. Good investment by the club and Orange X Services Club. And look, they're looking for a very bright future here with, like I said, you can see there's plenty of work going on, new irrigation system to boot. And I think, their goal is to really try and push to be that, the best golf course in the region. So, interesting stuff happening. And I'm a fan of Wentworth as a golf course. And with these sorts of improvements, it really will become a much better golf course as time goes on. Now, we stay in Orange, like I mentioned, and now we head not far from Wentworth Golf Club to one of my favourite courses in the Central West, and that is Duntry League Golf Club, also in Orange, and it's a wonderful golf course, this Duntry League. Now, this club is having capillary concrete installed into a number of bunkers throughout the front 9 of the golf course, and that's what they've been up to. This is a great new addition to weatherproofing their bunkers on the golf course, and you will start to see better presentation of these bunkers after rain events, as they won't need to be repaired anywhere near as much as they have done in the past, like some of the other bunkers around. And the capillary concrete means that the sand won't move around in the bunkers anymore, basically. And we're hearing all sorts of reports and stories, over time, and certainly after this recent rain event, of how well these new modern bunker lining products are going. And capillary concrete is one of them. So it's a great investment by Duntry League into their golf course, and a great upgrade as they move forward, improving their wonderful golf course that they have there at Duntry League in Orange. So look, the two golf courses, the two 18-hole tracks at Orange in the central west of New South Wales, it's about an hour or so, 45 minutes west of Bathurst. So give you a bit of an idea of where we're talking, and that in itself is about 3.5 hours west of Sydney. So it's a wonderful area, cool climate region, and there's plenty of great golf around there. And the two courses at Orange are doing a lot of work to improve themselves. So if you're planning your next trip out the Central West for a bit of golf in maybe in the springtime or in the summertime later into 2022, you'll certainly have some good things to go and enjoy out there at Orange. Now that's it for New South Wales. We're going to move into Victoria. We're going to go to Warburton Golf Club. Now, that's one of my favourite regional courses outside Melbourne City, and it's located east of Melbourne itself in the upper reaches of the Yarra Valley. And they've recently had a volunteer team from the Garden Club. And I know it sounds funny that I'm mentioning these things, but it's really, really great to see some of these smaller clubs, and it's great to talk about their volunteers, because these people are the beating heart of these regional clubs. They don't have big greenkeeping staff teams. They don't have a lot of paid labour. They can't afford that sort of thing. So to have a great volunteer base, to be able to put a bit of time and effort into the golf course and help out where it's required under the direction of the committee and the superintendent, they're great things to see happening. And we got an example here at Warburton. Now, the Garden Club guys have been out there and they've built a new timber bridge that crosses a creek near the third green to keep people moving around the golf course. Now, these types of bridges on courses have a lifespan And it's not often as long as you might think. They do have a lifespan and they have an end date where things become a problem and they become a safety concern. And it's great, like I said again, to see a small group of volunteers be able to put in some time and help the club out with a project just like this. Now, a job well done, and a shout out from me to the Garden Club boys at Warburton for building a brand new bridge there on course near the third green. Fantastic. Well done, guys. Now, we're going to move down to Mornington Golf Club, which is down in the Mornington Peninsula, southeast of Melbourne, and it's fast approaching the opening of their newly designed 6th hole that was done by Ben Davey from Contour Golf in conjunction with Darius Oliver. Now, there are also a number of new tees on the iconic par 3 7th hole that will be opening when the 6th does as well. If you're a member or a visitor to Mornington, stay tuned to the club for details on when exactly it will be opened. But it's a shining light there for Mornington, and it's a great improvement certainly to their 6th hole. It's a dramatic improvement, if I'm being honest, from what I've seen. I haven't been to Mornington myself. Been down that way and played a few other courses. Haven't had the chance to get into Mornington Golf Club, but from what I've seen, heard about, speaking with Ben Davey as well, this is a great improvement. And look, I think everyone's really, really looking forward to when that hole finally opens at the 6th hole. Beautiful par 4, and now you play through a little dip up to a green which sort of just sits on the horizon, nothing behind it but Port Phillip Bay off in the distance. A wonderful, great par 4 that you're going to see come out when it opens there at Mornington Golf Club. So great to see down there at Mornington, and everyone's excited about when that will open up. Now, I've got a shout out to new Superintendent Nico Douglas and his greenkeeping team at Cranbourne, who are working hard to prepare the golf course for the Australian Amateur, being held at the 29th of March to the 1st of April. Now, Nico has recently taken the reins after being the assistant at Spring Valley Golf Club, and getting the chance to lead a team at Cranbourne has Nico very excited, taking his next step in his career, and I'm already seeing some fantastic images coming from some of the work Nico and the team have been busy doing there at Cranbourne. Now, Cranbourne is located southeast of Melbourne. It's basically on the outer reaches of the famed Sandbelt region down there in Melbourne, southeast of Melbourne City. It's not too far away from the likes of Peninsula Kingswood, and it's slightly further inland, if you like, away from the sort of the beaches of Port Phillip Bay down that southeast. Now, look, I think it will be great if you're in Melbourne and have the time. It'll be great if you can get out and walk the fairways, watching some of the upcoming stars of golf playing at Cranbourne. These young upcoming players are the next generation of they're the next generation of the Cam Smiths that we've just seen win the Players' Championship at Sawgrass. Like, if you get the chance, this is going to be great viewing. And go there with your kids as well. If you get the opportunity, you've got young kids that are playing golf, they might be 11, 12 years old. Go there and watch some of this stuff. This is awesome. This is great to see. Now, being a private club, as Cranbourne is, many people may not have seen the course at Cranbourne, and the event is free for spectators to get out there on course and watch, like I said, much like the Players Series that we've had, the TPS, WebEx Players Series that we've recently seen. You can get out there and walk the fairways, much like that. And we saw the Players Series at Rosebud, to Cobram, to Bonnie Doon and Cypress Lakes, which was, albeit part of the very wet conditions. Overall, those 4 events were fantastic events. And, the Australian Amateur at Cranbourne, why wouldn't you want to go and watch it? It's going to be fantastic. And also see a fantastic golf course that you may not have seen before there at Cranbourne. Now, we're going to head down even further now. We're going to go to Tasmania, into the Apple Isle as it's termed. And it's time to escape to the amazing location that is 7 Mile Beach there once again near Hobart. Now, whilst much of the east coast of Australia has been dealing with the floods, CDP, that's Clayton DeVries Pont, have been very busy at 7 Mile Beach course, shaping up the holes and routing through the wonderful dunescape that laps Tiger Head Bay in Hobart. Some of these images are absolutely amazing. Now, if you want to see the dream that Matt Goggin, who's the man behind the project, he has seen in his mind since he was a kid, take a look at the 7 Mile Golf Instagram account if you're not already following it, and you will see just how amazing this location is it is now and what it's going to be when it's completed. I love following this place, and I can't wait for one day to get down there myself and see it in person. So it's just time to keep getting excited with some wonderful images coming out of 7 Mile down there in Tassie. So go and have a look at their accounts. If you haven't already on social media, you are going to love it. Absolutely love it. Now we head all the way west. We're going to go all the way over to Western Australia. We're going to start off with Cottesloe Golf Club. It's in the suburb of Swanbourne, just west of Perth CBD, and they've had some new sprinkler heads being added to some areas of the golf course, and this is going to help certainly this year of drier than normal conditions for the west coast of Australia, which is the offset of what happens when we have a wet east coast of Australia during a La Nina event. Now, when the east is wet, the west is dry. And that's usually what happens. So any more ways to manage the heat stress of the turf during dry time at a place like Cottesloe is going to be a great improvement to the golf course. And Cottesloe certainly has a great name there in Perth. So the club wants to be able to protect as much of their course as possible and make sure that they can keep, the golf course in as good a condition as they can, especially during a difficult time that they're having over there in the west at the moment. So we're hearing about how dry and hot it's been. And these little improvements of being able to put water out in certain areas, around the greens a little bit better than they've been able to do, are wonderful additions. So good to see Cottesloe doing their little bits that they can in very difficult and trying conditions over there in the west. They're also going to mention Point Walter. Now this is a golf course that I've mentioned in the past, Point Walter, and it gets yet another mention as they grow in their new third green complex. Now their 50-metre approach has now been cut into shape so you can see how it will look, and the seed on the green itself has struck well and is growing good in the early stages, which is great to see. Now a few more weeks and you'll really start to see the green here take shape, and well done to the greenkeeping team at the little public access 9-holer Point Walter there in Perth. So well done to the guys over there at Point Walter. It's really starting to grow well, and a good addition as they slowly move through. I think they're doing like a green a year, rebuilding the complexes. There's been a bit of investment there at Point Walter, and it's certainly a well patronised club. Got a mini golf course there as well, and a driving range, I believe. So it's a great little place there to get people into the sport. A really good way of doing it. Now we head down to South Australia, and we're going to start off with Royal Adelaide, and they've been busy doing some repair work on their third hole, repairing a worn-out area due to foot traffic there near the green as you exit the green. And they've dug it out and returfed the area, and so it's all nice and fresh, and it looks like no one's been there. That's what they do there at Royal Adelaide. It's absolutely fantastic. Nathan Bennett and Superintendent Nathan Bennett and his team do a wonderful job. And it's why Royal Adelaide is just one of the best golf courses in the country, along with the design of the course, the location of the course, how well it fits into the local environment, all the wonderful things they do. But under the direction of Superintendent Nathan Bennett, they do such a wonderful job there. The whole club, the team on the course, it's fantastic. So they've just done some little repair works around it. And look, they've also made some slight adjustments to the surrounds of the third green as well, making it slightly larger and keeping the short grass just a little bit further to the point where the local geography starts to rise a little bit. So it's short grass all the way to the low point, and basically it means that the balls aren't going to roll butt up against a tall rough edge. So they've just crept it out a little bit further to where it starts to rise up again, so the golf balls, as they roll down, will just roll to the bottom and stay in the short grass instead of having that really high lip of rough behind them. They're still going to have short grass, so you can make a little bit of a swing there behind the golf ball, and it just improves the playability of those areas. Now, it also gives more play options instead of having to play out of that long grass with a wedge. These are all the little things that make all these little improvements. These are the 1%ers. And you've heard me talk about superintendents mentioning 1%er improvements around golf courses. These all make a difference. Now, they've also recently completed a major irrigation upgrade to the 11th green. Now, that's the famous crater hole set at the low point with some large sand dunes running 3/4 of the way around the green. It's a beautiful setting. It's such a fantastic golf hole, this one. There's been loads of new work doing this, and ultimately it will provide assurance to the way the green is maintained with these improvements to the irrigation system. So these are the things that have to be done. It looks like a bit of a mess when it's happening, but once it's completed, like I said, the team do a wonderful job. It looks like they haven't been there after about a week or two. That's how good a job they do. They know how to do this sort of thing, and these are the infrastructure improvements that you have to stay on top of at a golf course. Now we go not too far from Royal Adelaide. We go to Glenelg Golf Club, where work on the redesign of the 18th hole are coming along very well, with a big fairway bunker on the left side of the hole nearing completion now. Now this bunker will have shortcut turf up to the bunker edge itself, and the outside of the bunker will be the beautiful natural vegetation that will be planted there in and around the outsides of the bunker. They now move to their 13th hole to commence the course enhancement works as part of the master plan for that hole. So they're moving through this big master plan, and now they've completed 18, which took quite a lot of work, and now they're off to 13. So we're going to start to see 13 change and improve. They do have a spare hole in play as they move through these holes, and that's a par 3. But in the meantime, you're going to see them moving around the golf course very well. So great stuff happening at Glenelg, and they're always improving, and it's so good to see. It's a golf course that I'm really looking forward to getting to one day, hopefully in the not too distant future. But we'll wait and see. But yeah, if you play Glenelg, you know exactly what's going on. So great stuff to see there, and congratulations to the club. And now it's time to talk about the elephant in the room. Everyone knows about the floods that have been going on in the east coast of Australia. Plenty of people have been affected by it, and devastatingly so. So I wanted to spend a bit of time, and I touched on, I had a whole Greenkeeper Shed segment last episode on flood recovery, which was basically just at the aftermath, or not even, just kind of in the middle of all this mess going on with this heavy rain and these giant rain events. So I wanted to give you an idea of flood recovery then, but this one's walking the fairway. So what this is about is news, and I want to talk to you, and certainly at some points it will be in some detail, about not only the amounts of rain and the way that some golf courses were devastated and damaged and so on by floodwaters, but also the local geography that adds to why some of these areas get flood affected the way that they do. So there is a bit of detail in this, and I've been working on getting a lot of this information together over the last couple of weeks. It is kind of another reason that took me a lot longer than I expected, just correlating so much information. So this is the flood topic, and we're going to move across a great deal, and hopefully it'll give you an insight as to just, if you're not on the East Coast, if you haven't been affected, if you're in other parts of the world and you're not sure what's going on but you heard about it, I want to try and give you a bit of insight into just what has been happening. So as you know, I've mentioned how widespread they've been, and it's the East Coast of Australia. The weather system that caused all of this is what we call an East Coast low. And that's a low-pressure system, a very intense low-pressure system, but not as intense as a tropical cyclone or a hurricane, but intense for our part of the world, where it's just not quite that really warm temperature of the ocean temperatures. It's a little bit further south than sort of northern parts of Australia, and we do get these, what we call intense East Coast lows, and they just bring some amazing amounts of rainfall. Now, we tend to see them form during the winter months of the year in and around Sydney, but this time 2 of them in succession formed, one starting off of the Sunshine Coast in Queensland, which moved down the coast to the northern rivers of northern New South Wales, before moving out to sea and re-intensifying and then coming back in. And then we saw another one a couple of days later, which was a complete second one forming out sort of off the mid-north coast of New South Wales, and then it moved down south to Sydney, and it caused flooding on the central coast and all the way down to the south coast of the south coast of New South Wales as well, south of Sydney. So we had 2 of these East Coast lows. It was, I won't say the perfect storm, but geez, I tell you what, it was bloody close. And I'll give you an idea of the size of the area that we're talking about. Now, if you've got an idea of Australia, this will give you a sense, and I've got a couple of analogies that might help you understand it if you're from other parts of the world. Now, we're talking about an area from Maryborough, just to the north of the Sunshine Coast, north of Brisbane, all the way to Nowra, south of Sydney, and the southern highlands of New South Wales. We're talking a coastline of nearly 1,400 kilometres long, and anywhere from 50 to 100 kilometres inland for the worst of it. So 1,400 kilometres long of coastline was basically smashed by these 2 East Coast lows over their period of time, which worked out to be nearly around 2 weeks. That is a really significant large area. That's so big. Now, to give you an idea, we're basically talking, if you know the US, we're talking from New York on the east coast of the US to Jacksonville in Florida. So that's most of the east coast of America. Or, if you don't know the US so well, and if you know the UK area, it's similar to the distance from Orkney in the far north all the way down and across the English Channel to France. That's how big an area was devastated in 2 weeks. It basically just kept hammering and hammering and hammering. Now, not all of that area has been totally flooded, but a lot of it has been affected by some level of flash flooding and riverine flooding. Some of these totals are staggering. And even the areas that didn't get that extreme flood level were affected by swollen creeks, and golf courses were affected as they do just by intense rainfall, which affects some of the areas on golf course. We often talk about bunkers and so on, and areas that can get washed out and damaged, or even just heavy soils can be affected as well. So, but 1,400 kilometres of coastline was basically affected. That's massive. It's 2 states in Australia, and that's huge. Like I said, in the UK, it's basically the whole distance of UK from north to south and then some down to France. It's massive. Now, I want to talk about those small differences of flash flooding and riverine flooding. And flash flooding is basically when you get high intense rainfall, and it often happens on areas of like hills and the sort of the raised areas around away from the rivers and into the edges of the mountains and hillsides. And for us, where we're talking about here at the Northern Rivers, it's often on the eastern side of the Great Dividing Range, where a lot of the creeks and rivers start up in the highlands, away from the coast, and that intense rainfall just it accumulates and it moves down those hillsides with great speed, and then it's gone soon after it stops raining. So we're talking, 12 hours after it stops raining and the like, that those creeks will then go back to a normal amount of water flowing through them. But they just get this massive swell, and the speed of water that moves is astonishing. And the power behind it is like nothing else. And then you have riverine flooding, which is low level, low-lying, the main areas of rivers that we often see that are quite full, wide, large rivers nearer to the ocean, that we here in Australia see, because we're not we're not like Europe, where we don't have giant hills and mountains where the snow melts and we have rivers that flow year round. We don't have that here so much. We have a lot of low-lying rivers that are more broad and hold a lot of water, but they don't often move very fast. So once they swell, they really build up with all of this other water coming from other areas around, and they just back right up as the water then has to move into the ocean. And with an east coast low, you get this, it's like a storm surge where the high tides and the sea level is raised through the giant amount of low pressure. It really lifts the sea level literally, and the water in the rivers can't get out because the sea level is too high. So then you have high tides, and these enormous high tides, the water can't get out, it backs up into the rivers, it backs up into the townships, backs up into the landscape. You get this mass amount of water sitting for days and days and days and days, and it can't go anywhere. So some of these low-lying areas, certainly in the Northern Rivers, we've seen water hang around in Western Sydney. We've seen water hang for 2 weeks. Houses are flooded for 2 weeks. People they have nowhere to go. They don't have houses, and they're in emergency evacuation centres with no homes. They don't have a roof over their head. They've got the clothes on their backs only, and we've seen pictures throughout Australia on our news here. You may have seen some overseas. It's devastating to thousands of people, and they're still, I'm sitting here 2 weeks on, 2.5 weeks on, from even more from some of these locations, and they're still finding areas that they don't have access to, people that, are isolated, still getting, helicopter drops of food and water. It's completely devastating, and so much of our countryside where this rain event has occurred is farmland and isolated townships that have highways running to them. This is not capital city stuff. These are satellite communities that some of our areas like Lismore have, I think, 45,000 people in them, but you cut all the roads off around them, and they've got nothing. you can't get in and out of these towns. So, the rescue, there's so much going on. It's completely devastating. But I'm talking about golf courses. So I'm trying to keep things in perspective because so many people's lives have been greatly and incredibly affected, and sadly so, with loss of life, have been affected more than we can imagine sitting here, and certainly me sitting here commentating about it. It's utterly devastating. So I want to keep things in perspective, guys. But I want to talk about some of the amounts of rainfall that have been recorded. And this is to give you an idea of just what was happening. Now, in Brisbane, in a 72-hour period, they recorded 676 millimetres in a 72-hour period. And of that, 300 mil fell in 24 hours. So over half a metre in 3 days and a foot in the old scale in 24 hours in Brisbane. Mount Glorious, which is an area just to the northwest of Brisbane, recorded a 7-day rainfall total of 1,771 millimetres. 1.7 metres of rain in 7 days. Now, there are some places in Australia, there's plenty of places in Australia that get over 1.5 metres of rain, pushing 1.8 metres of rain in an annual total. And they're considered areas of pretty good, pretty high rainfall in Australia. This area of Mount Glorious, just to the west of Brisbane, it's not far west of Brizzy at all, 1.7 metres of rain in a week. Non-stop rainfall. Staggering stuff. That's basically what they got was their annual rainfall in 7 days. Quite extreme. It's extreme in anyone's language. Now, those extreme totals were similar to many areas from the Sunshine Coast down to the Gold Coast and the Queensland-New South Wales border area. And so many golf courses were flooded and damaged. So they're just some of the specific totals that I've recorded, and it was just extreme. Now, the local geography that allows for flooding in some of these areas is quite interesting. And a lot of Brisbane was flooded. Brisbane City was flooded. Brisbane's the third largest city in Australia, and they had some serious flooding through the middle of town. And the Sunshine Coast is a popular holidaying area to the north of Brisbane, and the Gold Coast is a popular holidaying area to the south of Brisbane. Very popular stuff. The Gold Coast is very well known internationally as a holidaying region as well. Now, local geography, like I mentioned, that allows for flooding in these areas is quite interesting because Brisbane has the Brisbane River, and it runs straight up the guts of the city and west out nearly to Ipswich, which is a major suburb or major town just outside the Brisbane Metro. And Ipswich itself has the Bremer River as a tributary of the Brisbane River. And like I said, it runs straight through the middle of Brisbane City. So when they get this much rain, the city floods. Now, and there's also the Logan River, which runs through the southern suburbs of Brisbane, and it is affected by these floodwaters as well. Now, the Brisbane River heads north just before it gets to Ipswich to a large dam called the Wivenhoe Dam. And above the Wivenhoe, just further north, is Somerset Dam. Now, that whole catchment is what feeds the Brisbane River in the upper sort of elevated regions to the west of Brisbane. And everything downstream is at some sort of risk of being flooded. Now, the Wivenhoe Dam is not just a dam for the drinking water supply of Brisbane. It's also a flood mitigation dam, and it's actually done very, very well. It's a dam that's built very well for this purpose. Now, what that means is, when I say it's a flood mitigation dam, what that means is it has the capacity to hold back a lot more water than it stores for drinking water supply, and it releases that extra water that it holds back at a slower rate than it would otherwise if it weren't there at all to hold that water back. It would just all come rushing down at once when it goes over the top of the dam. But it has a raised dam wall above the full level. So it gets to full, but then it can keep filling up. It just gets released slowly. In fact, the Wivenhoe Dam can hold back up to around 300% of its capacity. And not a lot of people realise that. So 3 times its full storage capacity is what it can hold back as a maximum. Brisbane City as a whole metropolitan city region, it's on the coast, sure. But the CBD of Brisbane isn't on the coast. It's further inland. It's, if you know Sydney, it's a bit like Parramatta. It's a good 15 kilometres away from the coastline. The Gold Coast, well, much of the Gold Coast is flat floodplain with the Coomera River to the north, the Nerang River is in the middle, and the Mudgeeraba Creek to the south. Now, that's not all of the Gold Coast region, but the most populated parts. The Gold Coast hinterland is to the west of the Gold Coast itself, and when the rain runs off the hinterland, it comes down into the Coomera, the Nerang, and the Mudgeeraba rivers and creeks. Well, it's all flat, and it fills up the canals and the lakes and everything around the beautiful parts of the Gold Coast until it all drains north into the slow-moving areas around the Sand Islands of the Broadwater and the South Stradbroke Island. There's a lot of serious engineering that went into building the Gold Coast back in the day, like digging the canals, building up sellable land. You know, they wanted all these areas to have waterfronts, and it's a beautiful, wonderful area. But just so much work went into it. And that's what the Gold Coast is known for. And for the most part, it works extremely well, except in major extreme rain events when it's very hard to control extremely large amounts of water moving so fast. And just extremely large volumes of water in general, because it hits this flat area and it just fills up because it's only got a considerably small access point out to the ocean to the north. Some of the courses that were severely flooded, and I'll start with the Sunshine Coast, were golf courses like Noosa, Maroochy River, Caboolture. They are some of the ones that were hit quite hard on the Sunshine Coast. In Brisbane, along the Brisbane River, were golf courses like Royal Queensland that were affected. Brisbane, Indooroopilly were majorly affected. McLeod Country Golf Club, Woolston Park Golf Club. Now along the Logan and Albert Rivers was Carbrook and Meadowbrook, Mount Warren, Beenleigh RSL. Now those three golf courses, Carbrook and Meadowbrook, we've probably all seen images about them. And they were absolutely, completely under insane amounts of water. You couldn't see anything but the clubhouse. The whole thing was submerged. Whereas a lot of the other courses had a lot of parts of the golf courses underwater. Carbrook and Meadowbrook, gone. They literally, they didn't exist. It was incredible. Until the floodwaters receded, you didn't even know there was anything there. It was just a sea, an inland sea. And Mount Warren, Beenleigh RSL as well. Others in Brisbane of note that were affected by the floodwaters were Redcliffe. Nudgee, of course, had just recently finished their 36-hole rebuild, and they recently hosted the Queensland PGA, I think it was, and then they completely went underwater. And of course, Ashgrove, which I mentioned in my last podcast in the Greenkeeper Shed, they were completely hammered by flash flooding at the gap there as it comes off the hills to the west of Brisbane. Just the speed of water moving through. They had the Enoggera Creek through the middle of the golf course, just hammered and taken parts of the golf course out and missing, completely missing. Now on the Gold Coast, some of the golf courses that were affected, we're talking about courses that went under and were damaged, was the Glades. You've heard me talk about the Glades before. They completely under an ocean of inland water. Palmer Colonial was the same. Palm Meadows had some areas of the golf course underwater. The Grand, which is to the west of the western suburbs of Gilston there, the western suburbs of the Gold Coast, they had a lot of water coming off the Gold Coast hinterland, the upper reaches of the Nerang, which runs sort of through the golf course. Southport had plenty of areas. Southport's a very well-established golf club on the Gold Coast. It went underwater as well in a lot of parts. Royal Pines, previous former host of the Australian PGA, of course. Emerald Lakes is another golf course that went under a sea of inland water. It's just staggering. These guys, and there's plenty more, guys. I'm just mentioning the ones that I can think of. There's so many others in these areas that went underwater. Now that's the Queensland side of things, and some of the golf, and I'm sure you've heard a lot of those golf courses. But that's the Queensland area. So now I'm going to move into the northern rivers of New South Wales, which is pushing up towards the Queensland border as you head north from Sydney. Now they were hit by, and this is a bit of the detail in the background of what they were affected by. They were hit by a 1 in 1,000 year flood event. Just think about that for a minute. You often hear extremes of 1 in 100 year floods. 1 in 1,000. It was just as widespread as in Queensland, and some of the major towns that were hardest hit were Lismore, Corrockey, Mullumbimby, Murwillumbah, Casino, Chindra. Yeah, it was pretty extreme. This was on another level of extreme. The amount of rainfall, it just sat and it just wound in and blew in, and just the intensity I can't imagine. My heart goes out to anyone who lives in these areas. I can't imagine. I cannot comprehend what it must have been like. There were so many small towns and villages that were basically destroyed because they were hit by the speed of the flooding coming off the mountains to the west of the coast there in the northern rivers, before it backs up for the low-lying areas like I talked about, where you get the flooding nearer to the coast. Rain totals here were in the order of Lismore getting a 24-hour rainfall total of 467 mil. Nearly half a metre in 24 hours. Now, the Clarence River that runs through the centre of Lismore is built on a river. It's inland away from the coast, right in the, where these floodwaters really get hit. And Lismore, this is a little tidbit, Lismore is the most flood-affected town in Australia. Lismore just cops it. To this day, I probably don't really quite know how Lismore came to be, but it's the most flood-affected town in Australia. Unbelievable. And to give you an idea, because of the amount of rainfall that they had and upstream of Lismore, the Clarence River, rose 2 metres above the highest ever recorded flood in the town. 2 metres higher than the highest recorded. So we're not just talking a little bit over the old record, 20 centimetres, 30 centimetres, which is usually how close these heights are when they're at these higher levels. We're talking 2 whole metres. People were first caught out by the speed of the floods, and then they were caught out by how high it was. And usually, because they're so used to flooding in that area, usually they'll go to the second floor of their houses. They bring their pets and anything valuable for them that they need. They get it up off the ground floor and get it up to the second floor. Just, because they've been through these sorts of similar things in the past. They've known about it from stories from people from years gone by. But this time, they were being trapped on the second floor, trapped up to their ceilings, where there was nowhere else to go. Like I said before, I can't imagine what it must have been like for these people, trapped up there on the second floor, floodwaters rising and pinning you to the ceiling. I've got no words. I really can't comprehend it. Some people, very sadly, were trapped in their houses and they didn't survive, whilst others were able to break through their ceilings and get into their roof spaces, and then break through their roofs to climb outside onto the roof outside in the dark in an effort to escape the extreme rising waters, in an effort hope to be saved. That's the level of devastation we're talking about, and we've all heard, by now I'm sure we've all heard the stories on the news. Quite scary. That's all I can say. I don't have anything else to say. I just can't get my head around it. Some of the other rainfall totals recorded in the region were Dunoon, with a 24-hour recording of 775 millimetres. Staggering. Doon, which is another smaller region, not far to the north of Lismore, I believe, it had a 48-hour reading of over a metre. Now, golf courses in this region that were affected included, and we're talking, like I said, from the Northern Rivers region, which goes right up to the border. We're talking Coolangatta Tweed, Lismore Workers, Ocean Shores, Murwillumbah, Mullumbimby, Ballina, Woodburn Evans Head Golf Club, Tevan Valley, even further south, because areas that weren't extremely flooded, but down to Coffs Harbour Golf Club. They had areas of the golf course go under. But those first lot I mentioned, they were devastated by floodwaters. Now, some of these golf courses are still closed, and they're working hard to clean them up and get them dried out so they can once again welcome golfers to them. But this is extreme stuff. And that's the Northern Rivers Register. I stopped writing down notes of rainfall totals and things. It got away from me a little bit because it started to smash my place in the Northern Beaches and around Sydney, and we had to sort of prepare ourselves. We weren't sure what was going to happen, and we've got a creek right behind our place that started getting extremely high and concerning. Thankfully, nothing happened and we were okay, but there were plenty of places around us, hundreds of metres away from our house that were ground floor was going under, roads were cut off. Incredible stuff. Now, Sydney and the surrounding regions, well, we've all heard that Sydney was going to cop it once the East Coast low moved out to sea. after smashing the Northern Rivers region. So it took some time out. It re-intensified. This is the first East Coast low, and it came down the coast to hit the largest city of Australia, being Sydney. Now, by this time, like I said, I'd stopped writing down the rainfall totals, so you'll have to excuse me for my lack of work in this particular part. After that first East Coast low hit, saturated everything out to the west of Sydney, there was a second East Coast low, like I said, that developed, and it hammered Sydney again, but this time it seemed to be concentrated to the Northern Beaches area, which is where I live. We're talking places like Manly, Dee Why, Mona Vale. Sydney's geography isn't too dissimilar to Brisbane, except for the fact that it has a sharp rise at the western reaches of Sydney in the suburbs, which is called the Blue Mountains. And at the foot of those mountains in the western end of Sydney is the Nepean River. Now, nearly all of what falls in the Blue Mountains and the western parts of the New South Wales Southern Highlands flows into the river catchments of the Hawkesbury-Nepean River system with all its tributaries. Now, the Hawkesbury-Nepean River is a large river system for a city, and it flows almost 2/3 of the way around the city of Sydney itself. And then there's the Georges River to the south of the city of Sydney, and the Parramatta River that runs straight through the middle of the city, much like the Brisbane River does in Brisbane. Now, the funny thing is, the way the topography works in Sydney, the Hawkesbury-Nepean takes most of the water, including a reach of some 200 kilometres in length of national parks, farms and bush that run from the Blue Mountains all the way down to Goulburn. Now, this is where the Wallandilly River catchment is, and it flows into the Hawkesbury-Nepean. Now, unlike Brisbane, where the Wivenhoe Dam, their drinking water source, is also built as a flood mitigation dam, Sydney has Warragamba Dam, which is built in a canyon just downstream of where the Wallandilly and the Cox's River join before they flow into the Nepean, like I just mentioned. These all come into the Hawkesbury-Nepean. Why does this matter, where Warragamba Dam is? Well, it gives you an idea of just how much water flows into Sydney's river systems and why so many places have gone underwater 3 times in the last 3 years. So, Sydney's Warragamba Dam was built mainly to store drinking water for the city, and it allows for minor flood mitigation. But it doesn't have this massive extra storage like the Wivenhoe does that I mentioned before. Now, being the 3rd largest lake behind the dam wall in New South Wales, it has a really large water body behind it. However, there's no real capacity to hold any more back other than 100% storage, unlike Wivenhoe. It works on being just so bloody huge that it's not often at full capacity. If, however, there's a season where it should be quite full, well, it all just overflows with no control whatsoever, as if the dam wall isn't there at all. All that water just keeps coming straight through that dam system, straight over the top and into the Hawkesbury-Nepean. All that water from the Blue Mountains to Goulburn really hits hard into that junction there where the Wallandilly joins into the Nepean. And it hammers everything downstream. And we're talking Penrith, Windsor, Richmond, Pitt Town, all in a big ring around the city until it reaches the ocean at Broken Bay north of Sydney. So there's this ring around Sydney of rivers, and that's where all the golf courses get flooded from. Now, you've heard me talk about Linwood Country Club before, and they still have water over some parts of the course, but it is receding every day. And just like last year, they will need to reseed all 18 greens on the golf course again. Devastating for the club. Now, that doesn't mean they won't be open, so stay up to date on their social media accounts to see what they've got planned to get people back to Linwood. It's a great club, great people running it. It's just it's one of my favourites. Riverside Oaks, not too far from Linwood, also got hammered again. Windsor Golf Club, Rumcore, a little 9-hole course near Windsor. It's just so many golf courses affected. Now, some other golf courses of note that were affected by this extreme rain and flooding were places like Castle Hill Country Club, Liverpool Golf Club in the south, Carrilla, Cronulla there in the Sutherland Shire, just to the south of Sydney Centre, Woolooware as well, and we go to the west of Sydney, and Penrith Golf Club, Glenmore Park, Dunheved, all over the place, Bingara Gorge, Stonecutters Ridge, Twin Creeks, some of these ones like Stonecutters and Twin Creeks, they're some of the well-known sort of resort-style newer facilities. They're around, some of them around sort of 15, 20 years old. even Stonecutters isn't quite that old at all, actually. I think it's about 10 years old. Macquarie Links, Bankstown, Georges River. Georges River's just reopened. It's a public access golf course. Camden Lakeside, Camden as well, some of the lower parts at Camden Golf Club. The list goes on and on and on. And in terms of the flash flooding areas that were affected, and this is by the second east coast low that hit the northern beaches around where I live, we're talking places like the well-known Manly Golf Club, which was completely underwater, more or less, which is very unusual for that place. They do get a lot of low areas covered, but this flash flooding that came in was extreme, and Manly Golf Club, basically the whole place went under. Warringah Golf Club, Cromer Golf Club, Longreef, and the low areas of Longreef. If you know Longreef, the headland is fine, but down the lower areas where there's a lot of water moving through that comes off the surrounding landscape, they were heavily affected. Mona Vale, Bayview, it was just extreme, all so many places all at once. Now, some of these places with the flash flooding, the water comes in and it's gone in sort of 24 to 36 hours, but some of the other places with tide, where tide affects the water movement, places like Bayview had it for a little bit longer, and Manly certainly had it for quite a little while as well, which is unusual for them to have it for so long. It's just so widespread and so devastating for, like I said, for many people first, but in this instance that I'm talking about, it was, just completely incredibly overwhelming as well. And so devastating for golf courses, and the recovery and repair that's required on so many of these golf courses is pretty full on, guys. Now, please don't think that any of these courses will be closed for months to come. I talked about in my last podcast about the flood recovery. That's like I mentioned, if you might recall, if you've listened to it, we're talking the longer term repairs and recovery, and this is till everything is completely fixed and repaired. Doesn't mean you can't play golf on it for 6 months or 3 months. It might take that long to repair everything. A lot of these courses are open. Nearly all the ones that I've mentioned are now back open for play. So don't leave them alone. Don't think that you can't go back and play there. Call the club to find out if they're open again for play, and or when their opening date is very soon. Places like Linwood might take another week or so before they can work out how they're going to get players back out there. And Linwood does a great job in doing that to get people back out as fast as possible, even though there's big repairs that they might need to be considering, as you heard me talk about just before. But they'll be open soon for golf of some type to get people back out, to get their membership back out and supporting the club. So like I said, all of these golf courses I've mentioned, please don't think you can't get on them. Most of them, if not all of them, are pretty much open in some form for golf to have people get back out there and enjoy the pastime that they love, and certainly supporting the clubs that they love to support. So I want you to remember that and keep that in mind. And most of all, it's about supporting these places to get them back open for play. That's where I'm going to leave the flood stuff, guys. There's so much in that, and it's been completely devastating and widespread. I hope you get an appreciation for just how big and how vast an area of Australia's east coast was affected by the floods. Now I'm going to finish off Walking the Fairways with one of my favourite parts of the Walking the Fairway segment is sustainable golf, and this is a positive point to finish on, guys. So there's a couple of things that I wanted to talk about. I'm going to go back to Victoria to Woodend Golf Club. There's a bit of news coming out of Woodend with Kate Torgerson from Environmental Golf Solutions, who's been down there a few times in the last sort of six to 9 months, looking at how Woodend can improve their stance in the local environment and what they can do and how they can utilise the golf course to improve their sustainability in the local environment as well moving forward. So 6 months has passed since they decided to select some out-of-play areas of the golf course to become no-mow zones. Basically what that means is they're not going to mechanically maintain those places, these select areas on the golf course. They're out of play, but that's going to allow those areas to regenerate naturally, and then they'll be able to just sort of help that regeneration along with select work in those areas as well. So the native vegetation has now grown up, and some of the natural grasses in those areas, the native grasses, have started to have begun setting seed, and these things are real positives for then the population growth in those areas of those particular plants. And with that growth comes an influx of fauna by way of insects and other small wildlife into these areas. The biodiversity goes north very quickly, and these are the positives of allowing these no-mow zones to populate around the golf course areas that are out of play. glider boxes have since been installed. Micro bat boxes are soon to be installed. There's preparation taking place for some new revegetation sites, and seed collecting is continuing around the golf course. So, congratulations and a big thumbs up from me to Wood End Golf Club there in Victoria, doing some wonderful work on the sustainability side and how the golf course fits into the local environment and how they can do it better. Now I'm going to head to South Australia, and there's a great story coming out of SA. It's fantastic, this one, and it's just what golf courses have to offer the natural environment. And in the past, you've heard me talk about this particular project before, and that is of the yellowish sedge skipper. And it's got a couple of key golf courses, a couple of well-known golf courses working together. Now, this particular butterfly was last recorded in Adelaide in 1985. So it's been absent for quite some time, only 37 years ago. Now, like I mentioned, a few clubs that are working together on this particular project. We're talking Royal Adelaide Golf Club, Glenelg, The Grange and Kooyonga. All some of the premier golf courses there in Adelaide, and they've been working together to provide connected habitat areas throughout their golf courses. And last month, the yellowish sedge skipper caterpillars, some of those caterpillars were released for the first time on an area of remnant wetlands on the golf course in there in Royal Adelaide. This is just a wonderful first step in rewilding this butterfly, and there are more planned releases in other areas of some of those other golf courses as those areas are selected that they're at the right time to take these caterpillars and harbour their growth and foster their reproduction as time moves forward. So it's just a wonderful project and a positive story to finish off Walking the Fairways. So there it is, guys. It's a bit of a long one this time. There's plenty of news, plenty been happening, and that's a great way to finish off with a bit of sustainable golf, one of my favourite parts of Walking the Fairways. And there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for taking the time out to listen to the Golfing Greenkeeper podcast, hosted by myself. I really appreciate you taking the time out, as always. And look, there was quite a lot going on in that episode. And there's been so much happening around Australia with plenty of things going on the golf courses around the country. Please like, share, subscribe. As I do remind you, I really appreciate you guys passing the podcast around to your friends, and hopefully they'll get something out of it just the same as much as you have about staying up to date with what's happening around the country, and also the different segments that I've got coming out across the podcast with the Greenkeepers Shed, with Keeper of the Greens, with the Design Brief, all sorts of, and just different interviews. Also with the new one, the Boardroom, where I hope to have some more, planning on having some more guests coming on the podcast very soon. So I have had a pause of Keeper of the Greens. You probably noticed that's been out for a little bit, doing a little bit of rejigging there, and got some new guests planned to come on very, very soon. So stay tuned, and I've got plenty of things happening, plenty of things planned coming out of the podcast, and lots of new interviews and things coming along as well. So stay tuned, guys, for some more new stuff happening on the podcast, and also where I can keep you up to date with Walking the Fairways. I really appreciate your reviews and kind words and comments. Recently had a couple of messages and kind comments from people from further afield overseas, which has been wonderful. So thank you to you guys listening, certainly over in the UK and up there in Canada as well. So thank you guys for listening and taking the time out just to see what's going on down here in Australia. Now, as I always say, and I'll finish off the podcast, you hit 'em clean, we'll keep 'em green. Have yourselves a lovely day, and I look forward to catching up with you next week.